Welcome to East Coast Sailing. I'm Rob and today I'm leaving Ramsgate and departing across the North Sea, where I'll be crossing the English Channel in freezing conditions, and I'll be landing in France, specifically a location called Gravelines. After leaving Ramsgate, I'll be travelling around the treacherous Goodwin sands and on to Sandettie Light Vessel and finally Gravelines. The total distance is 34 nautical miles and I expect to do this in 5.5 hours. And if you've never done this journey before, I'm going to talk you through all of the paperwork and customs procedures to make sure you stay on the right side of the law. I'll be recreating a journey that I made some 7 years before at this very light vessel when I was a youngster. This was the first time that I'd ever crossed the English Channel on my own. Crossing the English Channel is a rite of passage for any sailor. We have to contend with moving sandbanks, shipwrecks, fast-moving tides and busy shipping lanes. If you can sail here, you can sail anywhere in the world. Today's episode covers the gentle ride over to France and the contrast on the return journey. I face the wrath of the North Sea as temperatures drop to 3 degrees Celsius as the UK approaches winter. I also keep a sharp lookout for people in the water as I discover a number of life jackets. Come and join me as I fly along the North Sea hitting speeds of 11 knots. After a gentle sail from Tollesbury to Ramsgate, it was definitely the right decision staying in port for one more day to wait for a better weather window. I did all my regular daily engine checks and topped up the oil and everything looked okay.
Ramsgate VCS, sailing vessel with Vanya ready to depart, permission to leave the harbour, over.
Vanya, you just stand by 2 minutes for me please. I've got the pilot boat inbound. Once the pilot boat's through, you have permission to exit.
Roger, sailing vessel standby, over. Port control, Ivania, over.
Vanya, thank you, station 3, permission to exit.
Many thanks, Ivania, over.
When the boat's on the pontoon, I'd recommend to get as many mooring lines and fenders packed away as possible so you have less to do once you're on the water. I could hear someone calling me on the radio exactly how my mother used to address me when I'd done something wrong.
Ivania, port control, over.
Yeah, just for your information, sir, please keep between the buoys. It gets kind of shallow up that end.
Received, Ivania out.
Fair play to the lady on the radio who gave me a heads up, but there was no real risk of grounding. It was high tide and our boat only draws 1.2 metres and we had 2.7 metres under the keel. Wherever possible, I always put the mooring lines and fenders away safely inside the protection of the harbour. It's much easier doing it in protected waters than out on the open sea. That Border Force boat serves a good reminder to run through all the paperwork and customs procedures before leaving and re-entering the UK. Now, I'm going to hold my hands up. Since doing a little bit of investigation to inform this video, I didn't realise there's loads of procedures that I should have been doing, and I've exposed myself to lots of different civil penalties. Now, these fines can range from £1,000 to £2,000, but I don't feel this information is widely publicised. I've certainly gone to many marinas and haven't seen a mandatory information billboard where this information is published. So I think the Border Force need to do a little bit more work trying to get this message out there. Now, some of these procedures have only come into play since the UK has left the European Union on the 31st of January 2020. So if I didn't know this information, I'm sure there's lots of you out there who didn't know this. So hopefully this is going to save yourself getting a fine and any headaches and a bad start to your sailing holiday. All pleasure craft departing and arriving in the UK, even British flagged vessels, need to fill out a C1331 form. Now you can print this out in a 6-page document and you need to return those sections either via email or call the National Yacht Helpline. Whilst this system is still active, the Border Force Agency are trying to migrate to a digital online system. You can now submit a pleasure craft report before your journey online. The report must be submitted 24 hours or up to 2 hours before departure. It's also a legal requirement to either cancel the voyage or amend any details if they change. Customs have even produced a nice guidance document showing you all the different contraventions and the fines associated with each one. And on the .gov dashboard you can see how many voyage plans are in draft, have been submitted or cancelled. Let's run through all the mandatory paperwork you should have before you go to France. First up is a valid passport for all crew members, and it must have 6 months of validation remaining. Your boat needs to be registered as a British flagged vessel. Now the easiest way to do this is registering your boat under the Small Ships Register. To register your boat it costs £35 and this lasts for 5 years. If you're using and operating a boat that you don't legally own, you need a letter of authorisation from the owner. You must carry a copy of your boat insurance policy, whether it's digital or a hard copy. Every VHF radio carried on board, whether it's fixed or a handheld, needs to have a licence issued by Ofcom. Now this won't cost you anything and it will last for your ownership of the boat. If you operate a VHF radio, you must be competent to do so and have a certificate. Now the RYA run a course called the Maritime Radio Operator Certificate of Competence. Now it's a 6 to 7 hours of self-studying, and then you need to also undertake a practical exam at an RYA centre. The total cost of both exams is about £150 and that will last a lifetime. Now let's discuss the contentious subject of competence. When you turn up to France as a visitor, the only requirement in legislation to show competency is to be competent as governed by wherever the vessel is registered. Now, my boat is a UK registered ship, and in the UK you don't need any competency or certification to drive a boat, as long as the boat is not any more than 24 metres in length and under 80 gross tonnes, and you're not carrying any more than 12 passengers, which is crazy. So I can take anyone out in the middle of the North Sea with no competency requirements. Now, all I would say to this is that your insurance, if you read the small print, it's probably going to ask you a few questions about competency. Are you competent to operate the vessel? Now, how do you prove competency? There's no good saying my mate Dave took me out and I did 2 hours drinking a few beers and we made it back okay, or you got a few crossings over the English Channel under your belt, or you might have circumnavigated halfway around the world in the Pacific. Because what is that relevant to the UK sailing scene? It's not. So all I would say is I did an ICC. I think if you're sitting ICC from cold with absolutely no knowledge, I think they're about £1,000. If you supply your own boat and you have a pretty good understanding, I think that cost goes down dramatically, and you've only got to pay for an instructor to come out to your boat, which is about 250 quid for half a day. Now, you're going to have to do a mixture of theory and a practical. They're going to ask you about all the shapes on the boat in the daytime, so whether you've got a diver or a vessel towing another boat, what they all mean, as well as the various lights on top of the boat at night time if you're sailing. Then the exam is going to move over to a practical, where you're going to have to take your boat out, you're going to dock it up onto a pontoon and just show you can manoeuvre the boat safely around the water, around the marina, and that's it. It's a pretty easy certification to acquire. Now, all I would say is that lasts for 5 years, and every 5 years you have to pay about £55 to renew it. You don't have to sit any extra courses. So to me, it seems like a bit of a cash cow and a waste of time paying for it. Why can't it be like the short range radio certificate, where you pay once and it's with you for your lifetime? Because let's face it, you're only going to get better at sailing the older and more experience you cover and the more places you go to. Now, once you get to France, you might decide you want to go through some inland waterways, and everything I said before just goes out the window, and you do have to have the ICC. That becomes a mandatory requirement, and it's recognised by many countries. If you want to go belts and braces, I would recommend carrying these other documents. These are not mandatory. When you re-enter the UK, you might be asked to prove the VAT status. Now, you can carry the original invoice when the boat was manufactured to cover yourself. Make sure you have travel insurance that suits any of your specific medical needs. Carry your global health insurance card or your European health insurance card. Carry the bill of sale or proof of ownership. It's good practice to carry the original boat builder certificate. It always shows good organisation to keep a boat log. That should keep the Border Force agents off our back for a little bit.
welcome to day 2 of the sailing adventure as I try and get to Gravelines in France. It's the middle of October, so it's pretty chilly today, and you can see I'm sporting my new East Coast sailing gear, so have a look in the description. You will find the link to my online shop that I've just started. So I've just left Ramsgate at about 11:30, so I was a little bit later than what I wanted to be. I just had to get a few things set up, so it should be about a 5.5 hour journey to get across there. I think it's 34 nautical miles from Ramsgate. I just want to nip in before it starts getting dark because we're in the middle of October. So I just left about a few hours before to see Fran and Hugo off. We had a nice coffee together, and now I'm setting sail across a very empty shipping lane for once, which is unusual for this time of year.
I was now passing around the northwesterly section of the Goodwin Sands. The Goodwin Sands are located 3.5 miles west from Ramsgate. If you go past this area at low water, you'll see all the seals basking on top. Whilst the area looks picturesque, the sands have earned themselves a nickname as the Ship Swallower. 50,000 lives have been lost due to 2,000 boats hitting the sand dunes in heavy storms. We were cruising along gently at 5.9 knots. I had the dredger Sand Falcon passing on my port side. France have made the customs procedure much easier for visiting yachtsmen. You no longer have to go through one of the major ports of entry, you can go through one of the 53 smaller ports, and Gravelines is one of them. The Sandettie Light Vessel represents the halfway point in this journey, and it's hard to believe that I was here 7 years prior. Most people that know me personally know I love a hobby, and sailing has been one of the constants in my life, and it's good to see I'm still enjoying it 10 years later. I'm sure most boaters had that sinking feeling of thinking they've identified a body in the water, but luckily this was just a life jacket. Now this is becoming more commonplace as people try and get to England in rubber boats. If you find anything like this in the water, make sure you radio channel 16 and speak to Dover Coast Guard. This could help the emergency services home in on a wider search area. I spent a good 30 minutes combing the area to make sure there was no one in the water. I approached the last busy shipping lane and waited for the perfect opportunity to cross just before it got dark. As I inched closer to the shoreline, I could see the industrial outline of all the power stations and steel refineries of Dunkirk. Pulled in the sails for the little use they were on the journey over, and cautiously made my way over to the entrance of Gravelines. All the pilotage books suggest that you can only get into Gravelines 3 hours before and after high water. Now I forgot France was 1 hour ahead, so I arrived here 4 hours before high water and had to coast in very slowly as I only had 0.8 metres under the keel.
An unbelievable journey. I've just pulled into Gravelines at 7:04. It's just getting dark. I think it took just over 6 hours to get in, averaged about 6 knots. It was a pretty calm and not a lot of wind, a lot of swell all the way. It's quite uncomfortable. See that amazing view behind me? Got my timings wrong ever so slightly. I came here probably about an hour too early, so I've just crept over the bar into the main canal which leads us into Gravelines itself. Now normally you can only get in 3 hours before and after high water, otherwise there won't be enough water. I was cutting it very fine. I only had 0.8 metres under the keel, and there was quite a bit of swell back there, so I'm so glad to get in. I don't think the basin lock gates are going to be open. That's 3 hours before high tide, and that's 10:24, so I'm probably I've got to coast it in probably another 20 minutes and I should just be able to get in there. Otherwise there's an intermediate marina I might be able to pop in. I'll turn the camera around, you can see what Gravelines looks like. Got an amazing wide canal here, it's beautiful.
You really had to feel your way around the channel looking at the depth gauge to make sure you were in the deepest part. I had a few instances where it dropped 0 meters under the keel, so we were touching the bottom. My timing was impeccable and the lock gates just opened. It was hard to believe that I'd been here 7 years before on my 22-foot boat for the first time crossing the English Channel.
Made it just in time.
It's been a while since I've been at this marina and I forgot how shallow and muddy it is. Now I did get my keel caught slightly, so I had to motor off and stay on the end of the visitors pontoon closest to the deepest part of the channel. Sailing to Gravelines is a perfect introduction to offshore sailing. It really makes you feel like you've been somewhere special, and I'll never forget that sense of achievement of sailing to another country for the first time. The locals must have looked in my boat and laughed as they see me swigging on my Prosecco in celebration. A big shout out to Jimmy from Celeste Sailing. He operates a mini charter company and sponsored today's beer. So if you want to sponsor the next beer, head to the link in the description on buymeacoffee.com and I'll give you a shout on the next episode. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I hope you've had a lovely day. You're spending time with loved ones. You're recharging the batteries after a hard year of work. And if you're anything like me, you're already planning next year's sailing trip. Now Santa delivered me the best present today. He delivered me 2,000 subscribers today as of Christmas Day, which is incredible. It doesn't seem like yesterday where I put my first video out to be judged about a year and a couple of months ago. And when I look back now, I laugh because the video was so bad, the audio quality was awful, and my wife said, you need to dub over it. So if you watch the very first episode I did, my mouth's moving, but yeah, I'm saying something else like a really bad kung fu movie. I also want to thank everyone who supported the channel, who's made a donation, who's bought the clothing. If you made comments on the section, if you come up to me and struck a conversation up in the boatyard, I love hearing about your stories. This channel is as much about you as it is about my adventures and my goals. I love hearing about what you're trying to achieve, where you want to go, and if you need any help and advice. I mean, I learn as much from you lot as you do from me. So let's have an amazing sailing season. Thanks for watching East Coast Sailing, and if you've enjoyed today's episode, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to get the latest episodes. Come and join me next week where I run through all the mechanical issues that happened on the day of the departure, as well as a quick exploration of Gravelines and then the wild ride back to Ramsgate.